We're certainly glad to have with us today Brother Rob Whitacre. He's no stranger to the Memphis School of Preaching. Spoken oftentimes on our lectureship. I believe he was on it this last year. Also on other events where I've been privileged to be, that he is at those as well, many of them. His good wife Nicole is with him today along with their two children, Hannah and Jared. It's been my privilege to be in their home and to experience some of that good cooking of Sister Hannah and also Sister Nicole. I don't know if Jared gets in on any of the cooking or not, but I think mine and his job is on the eating part of it, and we enjoyed that part of it. But they even use that as a way to evangelize. They invite people into their homes from time to time, and with the idea that they want to set up a Bible study with these people, and so they're a family then that's involved in personal evangelism and trying to reach the lost. Brother Rob is a graduate of Southwest School of Biblical Studies out of Texas. He's been working with the Willette congregation in Red Boiling Springs for the past 10 years. That's a great congregation. Those of you that have had the privilege to hold gospel meetings there or visit there or know anything about them know that the elders are very active and they reach out into the community. They stand strong as horseradish for the truth. And so they're a faithful congregation and just an encouraging congregation if you have the opportunity to be with them. And Rob and Nicole love for you to be in their home. They were just great hostess and hosts for those who come into their homes and things of that nature. In addition to the local work that he does in reaching out in the community with the gospel, he also takes mission trips into Jamaica. He leads a team of about 50 workers every other year into Jamaica, and there reaches out with the gospel of Christ. I remember when I was in a gospel meeting there a number of years ago that there was a person who was having some difficulty, and they called and they asked for Brother Rob to come, and it was a lady who was having some difficulties with depression and things of that nature. I don't know if he remembers it or not, but how very personal he became in trying to help this lady, and I even wrote down some notes in my Bible because some of the material that he was presenting from the book of Philippians on how to overcome worry and things of that nature were very practical in their nature and very helpful. So he does a great work. He encourages us to do that work. We've seen some work done on a large scale, but you might be asking, how can I be involved? We have some sessions here, and this is one of them, that's going to teach us as an individual how I can be involved in trying to reach others with the gospel. Brother Rob, I don't want to take any more of your time. We're certainly glad you're here, brother.
Congregation at this forum, and we appreciate your presence. Ronnie sat right over to my left for almost 10 years. He's the husband of Sister Marilyn Rhoads. Ronnie is not a member of the church. We started the year, and as I sat down with the elders and we began to plan and strategize, we have strategy sessions. How can we reach souls? We'd spent 10 years going into the community, reaching family and friends, and we've been somewhat successful. The Willette Church of Christ exists, as some people say, out in the middle of nowhere. That church will not continue if we don't do personal evangelism. The church is going to die. As so many churches are dying today, no one's moving there, and so we know we've got to reach out. But within our pews, I know, and it bothered me for a long time. We've got individuals that are sometimes more faithful than the members. Spouses, they're in our pews. What are we doing about it? I said, brethren, let's make it our goal this year to reach out to every single one of these individuals. I want to reach out to Ronnie, and I have some others that we're reaching out to, and let's see if we can do a personal Bible study. So my question was this: has anyone ever done a personal Bible study with Ronnie Rhoads? And we all looked at each other. By memory, no one could recall. And so here it is. God has brought us a prospect sitting in our pews, and no one's done a Bible study. Why is that occurring? I know this is occurring in other places. Well, of course, the mindset of the brethren is this. Well, he's hearing a sermon every Sunday. Surely, he's getting the teaching. It's up to him to respond. I said, brethren, I want to put together a strategy to reach every person in the pew this year who's not a member of the Lord's church. So I went over to Ronnie and Marilyn the next Sunday. I said, Ronnie and Marilyn, I said, how about you guys come over to our house sometime this week, maybe next week, and just for dinner. We'll just talk a little bit. Now, we already have a relationship with Ronnie. I shake Ronnie's hand every Sunday. Every Wednesday I shake his hand. And I've been over to his home and he's had surgery, so it's not like he's just a stranger. So Ronnie and Marilyn said, Rob, we'd be glad to come over. And so we set an appointment time, and I looked at my family again because personal evangelism is best when the whole family's involved. I said, honey, could you make dinner? Again, Hannah, could you make one of those desserts? And Jared, we're going to clean the house up, and we're going to have Ronnie and Marilyn come over to the house. We're going to eat together. But they know what I'm talking about when I say let's eat together. That means we're going to have a personal Bible study. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of time. And so Ronnie and Marilyn come over to the house. We sit in the living room. We just visit and talk and talk about things in the community. Then we sit down and we have a great meal together. After the meal, when Ronnie's feeling really good, I looked over and I said, Ronnie, could I spend just a few minutes and talk to you about the church? Friends, I've been doing this for over 25 years, about 25 years. I've never had someone say no. I've never had someone say after you feed them, after they're in your home, no, I don't want to talk to you about, the church. So we got out those booklets. Now, Ronnie's heard sermons, friends, for over 20 years. 10 years before I came, he was in the pews. There's no need for me to spend weeks trying to teach him the first principles. Ronnie knows those probably better than some of the members know them. So I'm going to use the one book study method. It's called Does It Matter? We open the book, page 1, we get our Bibles out, and we just start going through the material. And I noticed this, Ronnie knows a lot of the questions and the answers before they're even given. He's filling it out. Now here's what I don't know. Where is Ronnie spiritually? So I hand him that little survey. And that little survey is going to ask some questions. And one of the questions is going to kind of give an indicator to me as to where he is. And I notice that Ronnie is unsure if he's saved. At that very point, I realize when we get to the steps of salvation, when we get to baptism, the rubber's going to meet the road. And it does. And I can see that Ronnie understands. He knows he's lost. And I looked at Ronnie and said, no, Ronnie, I said, you know you're lost. He says, yes. You know what you need to do to be saved. He says, yes, I've known for a long time. I said, Ronnie, what's holding you back? He says, Rob, you said, my brother, my family, he said, they're all members of a denomination. And he said, I'm afraid if I obey the gospel, what they might say and what that might do to my side of the family. And so I stopped at that point and I said, Ronnie, can I tell you a true story of a young lady who overcame tremendous obstacles, who overcame family difficulties, overcame a parent passing away, who overcame just mountains to be a Christian. So I told him this story. Tears were in his eyes. He said, Rob, who is this young lady? I said, her name is Callie, and she sits behind you every service. And she's just 20 years old. And when I said that, Ronnie looked at me and he said, if Callie can do it, I can do it. And in fact, that very evening, we took Ronnie to the church building and we baptized him into Christ. I'm excited this afternoon to talk to you about personal evangelism, teaching the lost, because it's something that works. It's something that everybody can do. But I want to answer one question before we go any further, and it's this. Brethren, why are we doing this? Why are we as a church, as a whole, why are we not carrying the gospel personally to people? We're very good at programs. We're very good at maybe going overseas, but in our own pews, right in our home congregations, people are lost. Why aren't we doing this? I used to think it was because the brethren, they just don't know the Great Commission. So I'd get up into the pulpit and I'd preach that Great Commission. I'd quote it. Dear friends, when I went to the School of Preaching at Southwest, Brother Gary Colley required us to learn the Great Commission on all 4 gospel accounts. I didn't know it was on all 4 gospel accounts. When I graduated from that school, I had it memorized. I get in the pulpit. That was my version of personal evangelism. Here's the problem with that. You already know it. You have heard it from your youth. You can quote it as good as me. The problem, brothers and sisters, is not that we don't know the Great Commission. The problem is the Great Commission has become the Great Omission. We're just not doing it. And perhaps it is we don't know how to do it. Let me give you a couple things that I've noticed that churches are doing instead of personal evangelism. Number one, they're using what I call the accidental method. This is why we're not growing. Here's the method. We never plan. We never strategize. We never make appointments to teach the lost. It's completely random. There is absolutely no planning whatsoever. Preachers aren't sitting down with their elders. The elders aren't saying, now let's talk about how we can reach brother so-and-so. I meet with my elders every month. And on the meeting sheet, I've got names on that sheet. I said, here are people in our pews who are not Christians. Let's talk about what we can do to reach them. We need a strategy in every local church. We need to be talking about who's lost. How can we help bring them the gospel? Friends, the accidental method doesn't work. The buckshot method is another one that people use. We should support many works, minimal investment, no responsibility. Besides, it works really good in our budget when we got all these works listed. No personal connection or contacts. We don't know names. We've not put faces with it. Brothers and sisters, it's called personal evangelism. It's more than just sending out a newsletter. Friends, this is talking about learning people's names, learning their behaviors, learning their likes and dislikes, learning their struggles. Personal evangelism is effective when it's personal. Just shooting a shotgun is not what we need. We need a rifle. We need to aim for a target so we can hit it. Some people use the careless method. If it doesn't directly benefit us, we don't get involved. I don't see how that helps me at all. I know people like this. There's no need for me to go over here and talk to them. It doesn't affect me. And so we're just careless. We just don't care. Then there are those who use what I call the comfortable method. We like our group just as it is. In fact, the first church I preached for in Kentucky in Poole, I was asking the brethren, would you like to get involved in personal evangelism? I had this older sister, and God bless her for her honesty, but she raised her hand and she said, preacher, she says, we don't really want to do this. And I said, well, why do you not want to do this? We're comfortable just like we are. It's uncomfortable to meet new people. And her name was Sister Lois Ashby. I made it my mission while I was at Poole to get Sister Lois Ashby involved in personal evangelism. In one of our Bible studies, I called her husband. His name was Bob. Bob never been in a Bible study in his life. I said, Bob, would you like to be my silent partner tonight? I've got Carol Osborne. He's coming over to the house. He's a local barber. We're going to have a Bible study. Bob says, I don't know what to do. I said, can you help him find books of the Bible? And it's called silence, so you don't have to say anything. He said, sure. So he gets involved with Carol, and then Lois is hearing these reports, and she's getting excited. A year later, I'm taking a group of people to Jamaica, and I'm just asking, would anybody here like to go to Jamaica? She's in her early 70s, late 60s. She raises her hand, she says, I'm ready to go. And we took her to Jamaica. Dear friends, the comfortable approach that people are taking, it does not work. We've got to get uncomfortable. Let me share with you some others. Some people use what I call the indirect method. We only teach by influence, only by good example. Friends, this does not work. You're not going to bring souls to Christ just saying, I'm just going to live the Christian life and they'll see Jesus in me, and that's going to cause them to walk down the pew. That's going to cause them to get into the baptistry. Now, friends, it may open doors, but it doesn't replace personal Bible study. Then we have the inoffensive method. We don't ever want to say anything because we might offend and they won't come back. I have a hunch that's why we have so many people sitting in our pews who are not Christians and no one ever tries to teach them. We're afraid if we say something, they won't come back. And the thought process is at least they're coming. Friends, I've got news for you. If they're coming and they're not a Christian, or they don't come back and they're not a Christian, they're still lost. They get no points for being in the pew. These are contacts God has placed within the church of our Lord. Why we're not trying to take advantage of them, I don't understand. Then we have the lip service method. We will get in touch with you later. The contact is lost. The promise will be forgotten, and we never do it. Friends, no wonder the Lord's church is decreasing. Did you realize right now, friends, because of these attitudes, we're losing in America? We have got to begin to understand if we don't turn this around, if we don't stop these methods, friends, the Lord's church is going to diminish to a point in this country we're no longer able to be effective in sending out the message in America. Let me share with you some numbers real quick. In the year 2000, we had about 13,155 churches of Christ in America. In 2009, we have 12,629 churches of Christ in America. In 2015, we have 12,300. Now, I'm excited for the new statistics to come out. I want to know where we're at right now. I just have a hunch, though, we're still declining. Because until we stop doing some of this methodology that makes no sense, it doesn't work, the numbers are going to continue to decline. In fact, if you look at church members, the same thing. We started at 1.265 million year 2000. Now we're at 1.18 million 2015. Friends, those numbers ought to get us all, they ought to scare all of us. Every person who sees those that's a member of the Church of Christ ought to take that personally. We ought to be the individuals that say, we've got to do something to change this, and we can. You wouldn't be here, and I wouldn't be here if we didn't think this could turn around. When we look at the population statistics and the ratio of members of the church to the population of America, you know what we see? A decline. We see that our influence is being diminished. But here's what I like to point out when I look at these numbers. Do you know in the past, we've been able to turn this around? We turned this around when we started keeping numbers. We were 1 Christian to 535 souls. Friends, now we get into the 1960s and 70s. We're 1 Christian to 84. Did you notice how we turned things around? I just have a sneaky suspicion that was done because someone was having a Bible study with somebody. Someone took those Jewel Miller film strips over to someone's house and they watched them together. Someone took back to the Bible and sat down around a kitchen table and they did it. One of my elders recently said, Rob, he said, I remember a time in the 70s when my wife and I would get off work. We had a film strip in the back of our car, Jewel Miller, and we would go from neighbor to neighbor and we would show these. Friends, there was an era once when members of the church were known as walking evangelists. That's what we did. For some reason, we stopped. And we're losing. I don't like to talk about losing. No one wants to lose. But the facts speak loud and clear that we have a generation that's risen that knows not personal evangelism. Friends, I want you to think about where we're at. We literally have children who are growing up in Christian homes. Now listen to this. They have never witnessed their father do a Bible study. They have never seen their mother and father involved in any personal evangelism whatsoever. And then we wonder why we're not doing it today. When I was growing up, I can remember my father, I can remember my mother evangelizing. But we have a generation, maybe 2 generations now, that's risen and they've never seen it. They don't know what it looks like. And we wonder why we're declining. Brothers and sisters, we have got to get back to emphasizing personal evangelism. If we don't, the numbers are not going to turn around. There are literally right now thousands. Let me correct that. There are still over 1 million of us sitting in pews. The Lord still has over 1 million soldiers in this country who are capable of helping teach the lost to this dying world. The battle's not lost, but I said we're losing. The battle's not over, although it doesn't look good right now. Things can be turned around. And as proof positive, it's this audience. As proof positive, when you go back to your home congregation, there's still over 1 million of us. We can make a difference. Things can change. But here's the real problem we're facing. The problem we're facing is that a lot of us, we don't know how to do it. We're 2 generations just about removed from the last time we were actively doing personal evangelism as the church. And there are a lot of Christians in places that have literally no idea how to conduct a personal Bible study. It's amazing to me how many preachers have asked me throughout the past few years for a method of studying the Bible, and they don't know. They can get into the pulpit and preach a great sermon. They can take a Bible class and preach and edify the brethren, but you take them out of the brotherhood, you take them out into the world with non-Christians, and they don't know what to do. And so what we need to do, dear friends, is we need to strategize, we need to plan, we need to work on taking the gospel to the lost, not the saved. With that in mind, can I give you some things you can do? Now set the groundwork. and I hope that you're going to be passionate about this. I'm going to give you some things that need to be done in order to be a successful personal worker. Number one, take your Bible to Matthew 28. We're not going to verse 28. I want to go to another passage, a passage we often overlook, but it's a passage that helps set the record straight this morning on what we need to be doing. And the record's in verse number 16. Here it is where the Bible says, then the 11, notice this, disciples went away to Galilee into a mountain. Now notice what it says next, where Jesus had appointed them. Dear friends, did you realize that Matthew 28, 19, 20 is a result of an appointment? Jesus had set an appointment with the disciples. In other words, Jesus had prioritized personal evangelism. He had prioritized the Great Commission. He had said, listen, we've got something very important that we need to discuss. I'm making an appointment with you. I want you to go, and I want you to wait for me here in Galilee because there are some instructions that you need to hear. One of the things we need to do as a church is make an appointment to talk about personal evangelism. Elders need to be talking about it. Preachers need to be talking about it. You know, we talk about the football game. We'll talk about the national anthem. We have probably spent more energy in the last month talking about the national anthem than we have in the last year talking about saving souls. And I'm all for showing reverence and showing respect. But brothers and sisters, we've got to take some time out to deal with those who are lost. You know, families need to do that. From time to time, I'll talk to my children, my wife, and I say, you know, here is this person who's coming. Let's focus on them. Let's make an appointment. Let's call and make an appointment. Let's have them to our home. Let's learn more about them. But what I'm finding in too many places are good programs indeed. But what I'm not finding is personal evangelism. Let me share with you a recent little survey that I did. And it was just where I got onto the internet and I Googled Churches of Christ. And I spent some time looking through websites of churches. And this is what I found. I found churches have wonderful programs. We're helping the divorced, we're helping the married, we're helping the singles, we're helping parents. We got programs for everything. We got addiction programs, we got teen programs, we've got all sorts of youth outings. I am not in any way diminishing the good that is done here. I think these programs are wonderful. But you know what I didn't find? As I found programs for addicts. Friends, you know, churches have silver wing programs. You know, if people are looking for churches, they want to know, do you have something for the silver wings? On Friday nights, do they get together? Do you play games? I mean, these are priorities for people. Then, of course, you have the golden oldies. Do you have something for those of us who are in the twilight years? And I want to, all members need to be addressed. I found almost nothing on personal evangelism. I mean, all these great programs, all these wonderful things we're doing for the church members. And I'm searching, where's the personal evangelism program? Where's the personal evangelism training program? Friends, Matthew 28, 19 and 20 is about teaching the lost. And it's a shame when we can't find that hardly at all in any of the websites of the Lord's church. No wonder we're struggling. We need to make an appointment for personal evangelism. In other words, I'm saying we need to make it a priority. The last thing that Jesus says is go teach the lost. All these other things are wonderful, but that was the number one thing on his mind. It's the last standing orders of the commander-in-chief. Have we forgotten that the Great Commission involves personal evangelism? Let me give you a second thing. So make an appointment. Number two, you need an audience. When you're going to be a soul winner, you got to find people to teach. And here's what a lot of brethren come to when it's the audience. No one wants to hear the gospel anymore in America. People are just too busy. And I think at times we've used that as an excuse. People are more interested in the baseball game. They're more interested in school and at work and in fishing and boating and hunting and all those things. And it's as we've excused ourselves. Friends, you know what I found? There are more contacts than we can deal with. There are so many. In fact, do we not believe John 4:35 anymore? Say ye not, there are yet 4 months, and then cometh the harvest. But I say unto you, lift up your eyes, look on the fields, they're white unto harvest. Do we not believe that there are contacts anymore? Are we going to write off this country? Let me give you 3 ways to find contacts. Number 1, first, friends, just look out into the church. Look at your pews and start with what I call the hot contacts. A hot contact is someone in the building. They're visiting you. You don't have to go out into the community to find them. They have come and they found you. Most of the time, the Bible studies that we have in our family are from this category right here. They're individuals that are sitting in our pews. They visited. And I realize since they're here, they're looking for something. I think if all of us would just start right there, if we just start working with these individuals, you see an enormous growth in the local church. Because as people start visiting and we start studying, souls are going to start obeying. Number 2, we call these the warm contacts. Now, these take a little bit more work. These are contacts that are one away. In other words, someone that you know knows them, and you got to cultivate the field just a little bit. You're going to have to kind of build a rapport, a relationship. Now, at Willette, here's how we do that. We've got something called a prayer list. Now, I know a lot of bulletins put a list of 50 people on it that are sick, and most of us have no idea who these individuals are. And sometimes we even list them on a chalkboard or a whiteboard, and they're on there for months. Here's what we do. We take a prayer list and we list and we put the name of the person on that list, their address, their relationship to the church, and what their illness is. And we encourage the brethren to focus on those in the local community. Focus on people who are our next door neighbors. Now, we're going to flood their mailbox with cards. In fact, we've had so many people visit the church, and one of the reasons they're visiting is we had to find out what church sends 100 cards. Our mailbox was overflowing with cards. And so they're one away, and you're developing a rapport. You're developing a relationship with them. Wonderful contacts for Bible studies. Number 3 is the cold contact. Don't neglect the cold contact. Once a year, as a church, we'll go out in the community. And yes, we'll do that dreaded door knocking, and we'll knock doors. You know, it's amazing how you live in a place for so long, and yet you'll find somebody who'll say this: I'm so glad you came. I attended the Church of Christ 40 years ago, but I got discouraged, and I just haven't been back. My name's Gary. I said, Gary, it's great to meet you. And can we come in and talk to you just a little bit? And we began doing some Bible study with Gary. And do you know what Gary's doing today? Every Wednesday night, every Sunday morning, Gary's worshiping in the pews. He comes forward to be restored. And that would have never happened if we didn't knock on a door. In fact, you have a student at this school right now who wouldn't be here if someone didn't knock on the door of his mom and dad. Dear friends, we have members at Willette who wouldn't be in the pews if someone didn't knock on their door. I'm not telling you the door knocking is the most successful. It's the most effective. It's number 3 on the list. But I'm telling you, it is a method that if you don't use it, you're going to miss people. There are going to be people who won't hear the gospel, dear friends, because they're not going to come visit you. They're not going to turn on Gospel Broadcasting Network. They're not going to read House to House, Heart to Heart. They're not going to hear your radio program. I mean, these are the unchurched. These are the unreachable. And they've been reached. 3 things you can do. And they're simple. Simple individuals. This is why Jesus said the field is wide unto harvest. Let me share with you the 3rd thing. You got to have an approach. I'm going to use a familiar parable to illustrate the approach that we use. In Luke 8:15, you have the direct approach. But that on the good ground are they which are on an honest heart. You still have people who have honest heart. Who are these people? These are individuals that visit and they come and they talk to you about the Bible. Friends, there's no reason we shouldn't be studying with these people. When someone comes into the church, they're not their visitor, and they start engaging us, they ask us a Bible question, they are begging for a personal Bible study. And that's what they're going to get at Willette. We've had this happen several times over the period of 10 years. This is the good soil. You don't have to work on developing a relationship with them. You don't have to cultivate the soil. Their soil's ready. But most people aren't like that. And so you have to use the indirect approach. And that's in Luke 8 also. Let me share with you the indirect approach. Those by the wayside, they on the rock. They that fell on the thorns. Now, Jesus is using a farming example because it's something that everyone can understand. And I believe we can all understand it today. What Jesus is saying is that, there's some soil out there that's got some thistles and thorns on it. Now, I've done a little gardening in my life. And before I plant the seed, do you know what I do? I get out there with a tiller and I till up the soil. And I try to get rid of the thorns and the thistles. Then I can remember growing up, Dad had a big garden. And it seems like my chore was always, Rob, go throw out the rocks. Now, I grew up in South Texas and there are a lot of rocks. And it seems like the rocks kept growing. And I would go out there and throw out a rock and throw out another, and Dad would come with the rake and rake it, and there'd be more rocks. And it seems like I was always throwing out the rocks. Why did he want me to do this? He was preparing the soil. Friends, this is the same principle. There are individuals whose soil isn't ready. And we know that. How do you get it ready? You throw out the thistles, you throw out the rocks. Let me share with you what we do. We send them a card and just say, we're praying for you. We know that you're going through a difficult time. We have a local teacher right now in our community. He's battling cancer. And we've had, a very, very shallow, if at all, relationship with him and his wife through the years. But recently, we've developed a deep relationship with him. We've sent some of our members out to mow his lawn. They just showed up and mowed his lawn. He couldn't mow it because he's got cancer. He's unable. His wife works in a local community as well, and she's busy taking care of him. So they're gone getting treatment. They come back to their home, has a mowed yard. Didn't happen for the second week. In fact, I contacted one of our deacons. I said, could you do it the second week? And I said, let's send cards. And I called him. I said, I'm the local preacher. Can I come over and just have a prayer with you? When someone's facing an illness like this, they're not going to turn that away. They're going to say, yes, come and pray with me. So I sit down in his living room and we just prayed together on his television, University of Tennessee football. So you know what we did for the next 30 minutes? I became a UT fan. Friends, I'll be a fan of any sport. If it helps a soul be saved, I don't care what it is. And so I'll be a hockey fan. I'll be a football fan. I'll do some research and find out something about golf if I need to. I even got a pair of golf clubs. I've used them twice in 20 years. Both times I've used them to try to develop relationships with somebody. And so it is the case. So we just sat down and talked. And we've done this several times. And recently I was sitting in his home and I looked at him and I said, friend, I said, would it be okay if maybe when you're feeling a little bit better, that my wife and I would sit down with you, we just talk a little bit about the Bible? And he said, I'd love to. It's just a matter of time. As soon as he's feeling better, I know what's going to happen. So you see, that barrier's been broken down. And so the soil's been tilled. And so sometimes you got to work at it just a little bit. Now, I can give you example after example of this working. Let me give you a biblical example. Here's Acts 2:47. Every preacher in the audience can quote this. Praising God and having favor with all the people. And the Lord added to the church daily such as should be saved. Do you know what preachers say when we quote this? And rightly so. We say it like this. Any church you can join is not a church of Christ. Brethren, amen. I mean, that message needs to be stated. But we're missing something here. Let's say it again. Praising God and having favor with all the people. Here's something that the Bible teaches us about the early church. The people like the church. What happens when the people don't like the church? You're not going to have conversions. Here's my question. How does the local community look at the church you're a member of? Do they like you? Do they look at you favorably? Are you a church that cares? Are you a church that loves? Are you a church that's there for them? In the recent shooting at Antioch, as the news was reporting on it, do you know what the neighbors kept saying? This is a good church. They're always here for us. And the reputation of the church was good. Friends, that is developing an audience. Now, they're not going to be saved because you're good to them. But it does create contacts. Can I back up just for a minute? Friends, we often do a good job developing favoritism. We have benevolent programs. We have clothes drives. We feed the community. We got Meals on Wheels. A lot of good works going on. The fruit is dangling on the trees. And we don't pick it. We're not picking it. We're never asking anyone, would you study the Bible with me? The purpose of benevolence, the purpose of edification, the purpose of all these programs ought to come back to the Great Commission. And if it doesn't, they ought to be shut down. We ought to stop. We're wasting money. The purpose of this is so the church has favor, so that we can develop contacts and souls can be saved. Yes, it's important they understand they're added to it. But more importantly, the church needs to be a place that people know that cares about them. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. We need to open our homes. I'm a big proponent of this, and I realize that this is scary for some people. They've never done this before. I was sitting with a couple, and we were talking, and we were trying to reach out to them, and they were telling us about some of their deepest problems. We'd only known them just for a few hours. She stopped and she said, Rob, could I tell you something about what's going on right now? You know, my husband and I, we've been a faithful member of this community church. We've done mission work. We've been active. We've gone overseas. She says, I've been very sick. She says, I don't even know where my preacher lives. I haven't had one member call me. I've not had one card. I've never been invited over to the house of anybody. She says, in fact, in our whole marriage, this is the first time we've ever been to someone's home to eat. Now, friends, do you not think that made an impact? Do you not think at that very hour, at that very moment, her heart was just open like this, just saying, study the Bible with me? Friends, do you understand when we begin to do things like this, and we're changing hearts? And they did it in the Bible. In Acts 5:42, a passage we all know well. Daily in the temple, in every house, they ceased what? Not to teach and preach Jesus. In Acts 2:46, they continued daily with one accord in the temple, breaking bread from where? House to house. What about the 2020 vision for evangelism? Brother Grubb, we used to preach this in the 20th century, but it's still valid today, right? This 2020 vision for personal work. And it says how he kept back nothing that was profitable unto you. But he showed you and he taught you publicly. Look at this. From house to house. It's about time that we started using our homes as centers of Bible study. You'll be amazed at what happens. Don't be so concerned about the cobwebs. Don't focus on the painted walls or unpainted walls. Stop focusing on the shape of your silverware. Don't worry that your dishwasher put spots on the glasses. Let's focus on getting people into our homes and teaching them. You say, I'm just not a good cook. Probably better than you think. But friends, everybody can get a bucket of KFC, put it on a platter, and put it out on the table, and no one will know the difference. It works. I promise you this works. We need an arrangement. Lastly, and I'll have to go through this very quickly. Dear friends, we need a strategy. If you don't have a strategy right now to take one through the Bible, I want you to get one. In Matthew chapter 10, Jesus was training his disciples how to be soul winners, wasn't he? He said, be therefore wise as serpents and harmless or subtle as doves. Jesus was saying you need a strategy. In fact, in Matthew 10, Jesus gave them a strategy. He told them, this is what you need to do. This is how you need to do it. As I close, let me leave you just with a couple points on a strategy that's successful. First and foremost, every person you sit down with and study the Bible, there are some questions you need to ask them before you talk about the church and salvation. In my personal evangelism workbook, what I do is I have a little form here, and in this form, I ask questions. And these are simple questions. I've never had anybody who wouldn't answer them. I've never had anybody get offended because I asked them. I normally say something like this. We're traveling together, and I just need to know where you're located. And if you're located in San Antonio and you're going to New York, I'm going to give you direction. If you're located in Los Angeles and going to New York, I'm going to give you different directions. What's the difference? Where you're located. Would you just allow me to ask a few questions so I can see where you're located on the map to heaven? It's so simple. And so I ask questions like, do you know God exists? Most people put down yes. One of the great things about living in the South, One of the great things still about the Bible Belt is most people still say yes to these questions. Do you believe the Word of God is inspired? Do you believe in the Godhead? Do you believe Jesus became flesh, dwelt among us? I mean, simple questions. And so they're answering these. But you're really trying to get down to these. Are you saved? Most people put down yes. You'll be surprised. Some people actually put down no or unsure. But here's something we all need to understand in a Bible study. Brothers and sisters, we don't baptize saved people. They have to know they're lost. They have to come to a point in the study where they realize if they die tonight, they were going to be lost eternally. So you got to know that. You got to know what they're thinking. This gives you a window into their mind. You're going to ask questions like, have you been baptized? How old were you when you were baptized? Circle the word that describes your baptism, but look at this one. If you've been baptized, were you saved before or after baptism? That is a critical question. Don't wait until after they read Mark 16:16 to ask that. You ask that before you get there, and you'll get an honest answer. Now you know where they're at. You're going to do the Bible study. I end with this. Brothers and sisters, as long as the method you're using is scriptural, I don't really care what it is. If you're using Fishers of Men and it's working for you, please keep using it. If you're using the Searching for Truth DVD, use it. If you're using Ivan Stewart's Open Bible Study, keep using it. If you got the Jewel Miller set and it's working for you, use it. If you don't have a method, let me introduce you back to the Bible. Brother Bobby Bates in the 1970s was known as the walking evangelist of his era. He was Mr. Evangelist. He went around Bear Valley, went around down to Southwest. He worked with Rudy King at World Video Bible School. And his job was just to train preachers, Christians, how to be soul winners. He was very successful. Back to the Bible has a 90% success rate. He's passed away a long time ago, but his wife Wilma is still living. I talk to her once a week. And I asked her a question last week, about 2 weeks ago. I said, Wilma, we have about a 92% conversion rate using these. What did you and Bobby have? And she laughed. She says, about the same. She said, Rob, in fact, about everybody who uses these will have about the same. She said, I just wish I could get the word out to more people. Brothers and sisters, if you're not using a Bible study method, may I introduce you back to the Bible? Would you take it? 3 lessons. Take someone through it. You'll be amazed at what happens. I appreciate the time you've offered me this afternoon. I hope this lesson has motivated you, encouraged you, provided you the tools that you need to be a soul winner. Thank you.